if you've never thought about doing a short-term missions trip, think about it.
It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be hard and far. God is always in it and always shows up.
You're listening to As You Go, a production of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. Wherever you're joining us from today, we're glad you're here. We want to grow together as disciples and as disciplers. Hi, I'm Ruth McDonald, the director of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries and the host for your podcast today. Today, I'm joined by our special guest, Amy Johnson. Thank you, Amy, for your time today.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Amy's been my friend for a while, and Amy has served for 11 years, is it?
15.
15 years on the WNAC, or Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries board. She has just recently rolled off that board. We're sad to see her go, but she has been very faithful in women's ministries, both in the state of Illinois and in Michigan, her home state, where she now resides again.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted Amy to be on our podcast today is because she's also participated in several short-term missions trips around the world. So I wanted to talk about that and talk about the benefits and the challenges of participating in short-term missions. And I just wanted to hear her talk about her experiences with that. So I'm looking forward to what might come up today in our conversation. But before we do that, Amy, I want to ask you the question I always ask everyone, which is, when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So in the fourth grade, I remember having to write about what we wanted to be. And at that point, I had said I wanted to be a missionary. But the funny part, probably from the age about 3 till 6, I had an entrepreneur spirit and I wanted to be a dandelion picker.
Ooh, what are you going to do with the dandelions?
We had dandelions everywhere. And I hated that when people would mow, that they would just be mowed down. And there were so many. I knew that if I could pick just a few, that there would always be dandelions and I would make a lot of money. So I was very adamant about being a dandelion picker.
Dandelion picker. I didn't know that was a profession, but you know, there's dandelion tea and dandelion things. And yeah, maybe you could have maybe you should consider that even yet. Amy, what do you think?
Nobody was doing it. So
you can make dandelion chains.
There you go.
Yeah, you could do all kinds of things. That's really cute. And you wanted to be a dandelion picker.
Then I think later on in life, I was a teacher is where I really thought I would land.
We all kind of had our I want to be a teacher phase, probably.
Right.
And so what are you doing now, Amy? I know, but let's tell the audience.
So I ended up going into business because I thought that would be a good broad to just be able to have a degree in business administration. So I currently work in an office setting and I'm helping in the accounting department.
Right. And you've spent many years as a pastor's wife. Your husband is not currently pastoring, but how many years have you been a pastor's wife?
We had been in the ministry for 25 years at different churches,
which is
4 different states.
And that is a very significant length of time. Thank you for serving the churches as pastor's wife. And your husband is now a chaplain, is that correct?
Yes, he's a hospice chaplain.
So very, very similar. So you've done a lot of things.
And
so
I have worked in a school.
Say what?
I said I have worked in a school. So
okay, but not as a teacher.
No, I was a teacher's assistant.
Okay, well that's pretty close. So. Yeah, and do you still like to pick dandelions?
No, I think they actually spray to kill the dandelions now.
No, you grew up.
I guess.
You know that they're just weeds. When we're little, we think they're so beautiful. Yeah, you know, there's not really any difference between weeds and flowers except for whether they're desirable or not.
That's it.
Whether they're classified as weeds if they're not desirable and they're invasive. But I think dandelions are pretty. But
I do very much appreciate the little dandelion bouquets that I've gotten before of either from my nieces or the kids in school. So dandelions have a special spot.
I like their little yellow noses when they've been smelling them too. That's precious. Okay, well, Amy, how many short-term missions trips have you been on?
I think I've been on 5 now.
All right. When was your first one?
So I had kind of felt like I missed the boat to do any type of international travels. I had went to Bible college, but I had transferred in. And so by that point, a lot of people are already established and everything. So my senior year rolled around pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And I just never did go. So then once we got into the ministry and everything, and then I was a mom, I thought
Mhm.
I just missed that boat. But I had the opportunity to go to Kazakhstan and Tajikistan was my first missions trip. It was 2 in 1.
Okay. And was
Um,
that with with WNAC
yes,
for a women's retreat?
the board had been invited to go and do um, a women's retreat, but a training seminar to be able to teach the ladies there, to give them a retreat, but then to teach them to be able to do it in a lot of remote villages and just different places to be able to extend the women's ministry. So it was
That's
an
great.
awesome, awesome opportunity.
Now, that was when I was still in Japan and before I came on board at Women's Ministries. But was that the trip where you took specific items of clothing with you?
Yes.
Yes, it was. You want to tell us about that?
Many women will remember all about that because that was quite the event. We took thousands of bras through security in huge duffel bags, just filled with every type, every kind, every style. But that's what they had requested. And one
That
of the
was something
stations,
that was hard for them to get, right?
yes, yes. And one of the stations, because we had different stations that the ladies could go to, and one was so that they could go behind the curtain and kind of pick out their own American made bra and be able to then have that. And we actually had so many that I think a lot were able to get two.
That's awesome. I remember hearing the stories about the fun you had trying to get those through customs and I
Yes.
yeah, that's hilarious and really fun. So, Amy, what was really surprising to you about that first trip?
It was just, it was amazing. I think one of the things that still to this day stands out is when we were in Tajikistan. And I know you've been to Tajikistan. So when I talk about the hills
Mhm.
and some of the hills there, but we were at a retreat center and the hills were just amazing. And it really made you just think of where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. And, just the hills.
Mhm.
And just to be able to be there with the ladies
Mhm.
and to see how they minister and just to be able to be his hands and feet, but to be the encouragement there with the ladies. And it's so many times you go to be a blessing and you are blessed, and it's a two-way back and forth
Mhm.
street completely.
Absolutely. So, was that your first time out of the States and with a different language group, a different culture?
Yes.
Yeah. That was obviously the first time you do something like that is really impactful.
It was very, very impactful. Yes.
Where else have you been?
So after that, I had the opportunity. Actually, we had the opportunity to go back to Kazakhstan
Okay.
as e-team leaders, and so that was really fun and exciting to be able to take other people to where I had been,
And
and
for
to
those of us who may not know, E-Team is a group of high schoolers. How many did you have in your team? How many high schoolers?
we had 6.
6 high schoolers. Um, there are in every summer, Free Will Baptist send more than 100 high school students to various countries to have a short-term experience, and they usually send a couple with
Mm.
them as their leaders. So you got to go back to Kazakhstan, and then what was your next one?
And so there, when we went back the second time, one of the things that was so exciting is if you have the opportunity to go on a missions trip and then you have the opportunity to go back,
Mm.
is to be able to see those friends and the familiar faces that you have seen before. And then just the excitement on other people's faces to be able to experience the things that you had. So
Mm.
that was really neat.
So in the spirit of do watch one, do one, teach one, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's
So
great.
that was really exciting. I would love to be able, we didn't go to Tajikistan that time. I would love to be able to go back to Tajikistan again,
Okay.
just to see. But then in 2020, I had the opportunity to go to Ivory Coast for the dedication of the women's building there.
Mm.
And that is one thing, I think one thing about short-term missions trips that is so exciting and to be able to get outside of the four walls of the church. And
Mhm.
that's what I would encourage others that if you have the opportunity to go, and it doesn't have to be, I mean, my first one, I jumped in really deep,
Yeah.
but we've also taken a group to Jamaica. And
Okay.
Jamaica is a great place to go because you still have English,
Hmm.
but it's different dialect. So you have to pay attention, but it's a lot of familiar things, but yet you experience a whole different world. And
Hmm.
it's not the resort Jamaica that you see when you're on the cruise ship.
Right.
You
I think
go,
that is an important distinction we want to make is that you're not just going on vacation on these trips.
oh, no.
Did you work hard on these trips, Amy?
And different trips are different things.
Right.
Like when we were in Jamaica, we
Uh-huh.
helped build chicken coops was one of the
Right.
things.
That sounds hard.
Working at the school. When we took the E team to Kazakhstan, all of our boys had blisters and bleeding hands by the second day.
Were
But
you
then
doing construction projects or what were
we
you
did
doing?
some construction projects, but then we did some English classes
Mm-hmm.
and we helped with kind of a VBS setting. So
Mm-hmm.
all different kinds of things. I have such a heart for women's ministry that anytime I can do missions and women's ministry and it comes together, that's just, I think that's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
And then throw some kiddos in there and it's
So
wonderful.
when you were in Kazakhstan and Tajikistan, were you able to visit some hope centers, women's shelters, children's homes?
Yes, we went to a couple women's shelters,
Mhm.
just kind of private ones that were in people's apartments or things like that. And then we did some in-house orphanages
That's
too
really
while we were there.
And through translators, from what I understand, you were able to actually hear the testimonies of some of those women and what they've been through
Yes,
and how Jesus has changed their lives.
yes,
That is incredible, isn't it? It's a
it's
wonderful experience.
it's wonderful.
Yeah, I in the couple of trips that I've been on since I've been back from Japan, I just have to pinch myself sometimes and say, I am actually here getting to hear the testimony of this incredible woman who's so different from me and yet so we share the same Lord and the same faith and it's just
Exactly.
really a great opportunity. Okay, you've said 4 trips. There's another one, and I happen to know what it was.
And so just recently, we went to Bulgaria to help with the ladies' conference there.
Yeah, and we went together.
Yes.
So Amy and my husband Donnie and I went over there and we were traveling buddies. And how did that trip compare to other ones?
I think that one thing that I was surprised by that did make it a lot easier is how many English speaking people there were.
There was a lot of international ministry going on over there, is why we were able to.
Yes. And
Mhm.
that we were able then to sit, like, for example, at the dinner table and just have conversations, and we
Yes,
didn't have to do it through a translator.
right. And the
Um,
other thing you mentioned is that in Europe, in Bulgaria, we looked a lot like everybody else. We
yes,
blended in.
we blended in a lot.
That was
Yeah.
not the case in West Africa or in Kazakhstan or probably even Jamaica either. But
Right,
yeah.
right.
So every trip is different. Every trip is full of surprises, probably. They often, I hear from people who've participated in short-term trips that what they thought they were going to go do and what they ended up doing were quite different. So
You
you
have
want to say anything about that and flexibility?
you have to be flexible. Yes.
Yeah. Because you may not have brought the right clothes or the right supplies, or they may just throw something on you
Yep.
um, that you didn't think you were going to be doing. So you just
But
roll with it.
and God is always in it and always shows up. I think one of the things that I loved about Bulgaria was getting to meet so many of our missionaries and just, they're such an encouragement to us. but then it's such an encouragement to them, and they're able to introduce you to people that maybe you've read about in the newsletter, but then to put a face with a name. And
Mhm.
then just like you mentioned, just to be able to hear the testimonies of those ladies.
Yeah.
And
I know it could be a really long list, but what would you say are the things that you've most gained from your experiences with short-term missions trips? What things have you gained?
I think a broader vision
Mhm.
that so many times we sit in the pews, we get stuck in the four walls of the church or the four walls of our house. But then, I've always been 25 years in the ministry. We've done quarterly meetings and state meetings and association meetings. And then, of course, you go to the national. But to get beyond the state lines and even beyond the United States, and just to see our sisters and our brothers, but our sisters that are working so hard. I mean, when we were in Ivory Coast, it was amazing to me how many women, I mean, the entire women's center was packed full. There was women all along the sides and the courtyards, and just, I mean, they were everywhere. Just to be able to be there and to experience it and to learn from God and to be there. I mean, it was just such a blessing to be able to be there. And even when we were in Bulgaria, the ladies just thanked us over and over and over for
Mhm.
just being able to be there and to make the way. And I think that's one of the things that, sometimes we might give and you don't realize that, well, all I'm giving is $10 a month or $20 a month, but then to be able to go and see what that money is going to. So even if you don't have the opportunity to ever go, just know that writing the letter to the missionary, sending that comment on Facebook, or, giving that $5, $10, giving $2,000 to a certain project, the impact that it has just goes on and on and on. I
Absolutely.
think I think that's my biggest thing, is just to have that vision. And I hope that as I speak to other people and have the opportunity to share, that when you come back, that you can share the excitement to others, that they
Right.
will be excited. And it's not necessarily always to go, but if they have that opportunity to take it, to be able to go, but just to continue to be faithful in prayer and support and in giving and just encouraging.
Yeah. I love your heart for the ministry of evangelism all around the world. And I'm really grateful for this. I mean, it is a sacrifice. These trips that you've made, pretty much you've had to raise the money yourself, right? Or raise it from
Yeah,
your church and through offerings. And most people who go on short-term missions trips have to raise the money either by, fundraising or collecting offerings from their friends, family, and church, or out of their own pockets, So it is a sacrifice. And you probably used your vacation time from work
well,
to
that's right. You have to be able to,
participate.
and I've been blessed to have that flexibility with my job to be able to do the missions trips. And
So it's not for everyone, but for those who can and are willing, I think it's a great experience that, well, they say about the e-teamers, who again are high schoolers, they always say they will not come home the same person
no,
as they were when they left. And that's because what you said, the broadening of our perspective. I know that a lot of them, not all, but a lot of the mission fields that our missionaries work in, the people are not as financially well off as
right.
in America. What did that impact you?
When we had went to Tajikistan,
Mhm. Which is one of the poorest of that area.
right, we had ladies that came from villages that their bed was literally a beach towel on the dirt floor.
That's right. I
And
saw
when
that
they
too.
came to the retreat center, just they were overwhelmed and didn't even, one lady, she's like, I don't even feel worthy to walk into that room because there was running water.
Mhm.
I
And
mean,
Amy, just for reference, was it a fancy retreat center?
no, By
Not at all, right? I didn't see anything fancy in Tajikistan, and yet
by
when
our
you're used to
standards,
sleeping on a beach towel,
right? By our standards, no. I mean, we had a very thin, threadbare towel
yeah.
that, would probably be the towels that we would have thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was at the hotel. It was not your white towels all folded and everything, but every lady had a towel. None of the bed linens matched or anything, but it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that was impactful for me too. I did spend most of my life going back and forth between two rather affluent countries,
Mm,
US and Japan. But when I was able to go to Tajikistan, which is a very poor country, it made a big impact on me. Of course, I knew about poverty and I had supported people in poverty stricken countries, but it is different getting to experience it and
right.
see it for yourselves. And some of the dwellings,
Mhm.
that really shouldn't even be inhabitable. They should be condemned, that people are living with their children. And when I was there, the source of water was
Oh,
not clean,
right.
and having to hike a mile or two and carry what would be like a Walmart bag
Hmm.
to bring their water back in. And
Right.
it's very humbling, and it will instill a heart of gratitude in you, won't it?
And even, you mentioned that, and people think third world countries on the other side of the pond, probably some of the most humble dwellings that I have seen, though, was when we went to the villages in Jamaica.
Yes, and that's closer to home. Yeah.
Right. And people, there's many of us that have been to Jamaica, but we've been on a cruise ship at a resort right on the tip of the island. But
Right.
you go on in, and that's a very good missions trip to start with. If
Right.
somebody, wants to take a group from their church somewhere, but not crazy, crazy distance. But, there's a lot of easy direct flights.
Mhm.
But even missions trips within our states. And that's one thing that I haven't been a part of a lot is our inner city,
Uh-huh.
missions trips that a lot of our towns have.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of poverty and food insecurity and things like that right
Just
here in
be able
our
to
own
go and give.
United States as well. It changed your attitude toward gratefulness
Oh, yes.
and what you have. And honestly, you were talking about the $10 that you might give. I think it changes your perspective on that too when you see how very much $10 is in some of those countries.
Right, right.
Mm.
And that's one thing, even with WNAC, some of our scholarships that we have, and you think, oh, that's not much, but then you're able to fund 10 people to go to school,
That's
or,
right. Mhm.
what you're able to. And even in Bulgaria, the cost of the retreat,
Mhm.
it wasn't very much at
No,
all
it really
to be
wasn't.
able to have as many meals and everything that they did. To do that here would have
To
cost
us, it wasn't very much, but to them, it
thousands.
was way out of their reach. So
Exactly.
we were able
Exactly.
to underwrite most of that for them, which is awesome. Yeah.
But how little to us is so much to someone else.
So, Amy, I've heard you say that it changed the way you're able to pray for your missionaries. You want to talk
Mhm.
about that?
Just being able to, I mean, I'll use Amy and Jonathan as an example. I didn't
You're
really
talking
know.
Amy and Jonathan Postlethwaite, who serve with IM in Bulgaria.
And they were kind of, I guess you would say, our main go-to.
Yeah, they were our hosts for the.
But to be able to be in their home and see where they were, where they live, where the kids go to school, a little bit of their day-to-day routine. Of course, we didn't get to see exactly the day-to-day routine, but then to get to visit with all of the other missionaries and just to hear their heart, but to just sit with them it's different. I can't even really explain it, but it's different when you're able to sit with them at their table versus when you see them here at the National and they're sitting at your table. It's just it's different.
They're very much a fish out of water when they're back here in the States. Let me tell you, they're trying to be American and fit back into their country, and it's so different. And it's a very big honor, I'm speaking now as a former missionary. It is a lot of work to host a short-term group.
I have heard that.
But it's also an honor that somebody wants to come and see your life and ministry. And I want to brag on Amy for a minute. Um, I can say through the years we've hosted I don't even know how many e-teams of teenagers and all, and lots of other short-term mission ministry trips too. But as a missionary mom who raised four kids on the mission field, it always meant so much to me when the people that came loved on my kids. Just they brought them, American candy, and they read them books, and they just spent some time with them. And those memories are sweet to my children. It was their opportunity to interact with somebody from what to them was another country and another culture. What to me as a mom was like, yes, they're getting to interact with my home country and my home culture. And so, Amy, you did a great job in Bulgaria. Little Andrew, who he just fell in love with you, and he was your buddy, wasn't he?
He was my buddy, and we discovered that neither one of us liked pickles.
They bonded over the pickle thing. Yeah, and I know I saw his parents' faces, and I know how much they appreciated that. So, not only do we gain as people who go on short-term mission trips, but the missionaries gain too. They gain encouragement. They
Yes.
gain, that being able to touch base with their home culture, having their children touch base with what is their home culture, but not necessarily their children's. Yeah.
Right.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
I still have the picture that he drew for me.
Yeah, he drew you a sweet picture. You gotta love kid pictures and dandelion bouquets, right?
Right, there you go. But I would just encourage anybody that listens to the podcast to just support those that are able to go.
Right.
In your churches, encourage missions trips. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be hard and far. But honestly, that is one thing that even my far trips, I mean, there's hard parts for sure. Definitely.
You have to have some measure of health and the ability to make, to be okay.
But just to support and to go if you're able to go, and to continue to pray, and just to find those ways that you can be God's hands and feet, even where you're at. We live in.
There might be something local where you can be a part of a food bank or a crisis pregnancy center or the rescue mission. There might be ways that you can help in your state. You may have family ministries or orphanages or something in your state. Those are missions trips too. You might be able to join a disaster response team at some time that is needed. Just be on the lookout. If you have a measure of good health and the ability to join one of these outreach groups, you will benefit.
Oh, yes.
As well as the people that you go to serve. You will all benefit. It's a win-win. So I would like to say that as the director of women's ministries, our mission statement is that we want to help every Free Will Baptist woman find and fulfill her role in the Great Commission, both at home and abroad. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is just to encourage all of you, if you've never thought about doing a short-term missions trip, think about it. The next time something like this is announced at your church, or you hear about it when you get some information from the International Mission Board or from the North American Ministries Board or from THP, which is called the Hannah Project, give it a second thought and think about whether you can actually participate or not. And if you decide that you cannot, and I certainly understand that, we have a lot of people who can't, then the next time you give your $10 or your $50 or your $100 to one of those teenagers or young adults or other adults that are going on a missions trip, just know that you're not just supporting them to go on vacation or to go see the world. Even if that was their motive in going, which I'm not going to say it might not ever be, some people might just think, oh, yay, I get to go see the world. They
It'll
will
change you.
experience so many things that will change their hearts,
Yes.
but they will come back enriched and changed by the experience. So,
Yes.
thank you for those who've gone. Thank you for those who have sent. Thank you for those who have hosted short-term missions trips. And I think it's one of the ways that we can fulfill the Great Commission and impact the world.
Right.
So be looking out as you are interested in the podcast followers. I hope that you are staying involved with the ministries of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. If you're not, check out the website, wnac.org. There are opportunities that regularly come up there. One of them coming up soon is that we are helping to fund a short-term missions group that's going to Mexico to have a one-day event for girls ages 12 to 18 in an orphanage there through our ministry called Shine. And there were other things coming up. So be on the lookout. And we just appreciate, Amy, appreciate you and all that you've been willing to do for the kingdom. And let me ask you, do you have another trip planned?
I don't, but I'm always willing and ready. But I don't have anything right now.
Well, I hope that you will be able to do another one before too long. Yeah. And where would you like to go if you could?
We actually, as a family, were going to go to Japan right before COVID hit.
Oh, I highly recommend Japan.
And then the Olympics came. But I would also like to go to France. We have several missionaries that are really good friends of ours that we went to Bible college with that we would like to go and see. Now, those might end up being a little bit more of a vacation-ish type, but encouraging.
Well, let me just say, countries like Japan and France are not, for the most part, countries of poverty. They're certainly not third world countries, although we all know that in every country there are pockets of poverty. But I used to get the question a lot about Japan. Well, why in the world are you missionaries in Japan? I mean, aren't they wealthy? Well, Missions 101, people. It's not just humanitarian needs and physical needs that need to be met. It's also spiritual needs. It's most importantly spiritual needs. And the Japanese and the French are spiritually in poverty.
Yes.
So remember that as well. I hope you get to go to both. That would be awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time. And I think we're going to wrap it up today. Thank you, all of you who are listening or watching, for your time. And I pray that as you go, wherever it is that you go, God will go with you and give you wonderful experiences to serve Him.